Hey Jack, comb it back, tone it down, rake it up, make it fit, cut it off, better keep it short, hiding who you are. Torching it, cinch the frame, smooth it down, don't forget the line, the everlasting line. Iron fast, through like that, burning to belong. Yearning to Gibson girl, where's your curl? Straight ain't great, tie the rags, fry the banks, sweep it high, better growing tall. Hiding who you are, hiding who you are, hiding who you are.
When at last the sun sets on a person's life, what will that person leave behind? Perhaps the only tangibles are what one creates through work, the proof of a life well lived. The ambitious residents of 1900s Durham understood this acutely. One sees it in the dusty coat of the workman, the starched collar of the physician, and the hastily pressed blouse of the harried young mother. Children feature prominently in Mangum's photographs, from beribboned little girls to buttoned-up boys to the barefoot waifs alongside an immigrant caravan. They were the beneficiaries and indeed the legacies of their parents' work. Children were hope incarnate.
We shall sing to you of hope. And we're live. Welcome to Music Matters with Jason Tramm, and thank you so much for joining us for our unique podcast community, where we explore the triumphs and challenges of the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished colleagues. And thank you so much for helping us grow. We just hit 1,715 subscribers as of today, and every day we grow thanks to our audience. So we really appreciate you being here and watching our shows. Please remember to subscribe on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on our upcoming guests and topics. We love it when you like and share our videos, as it helps this community keep on growing and bringing in new members. We have a wonderful guest today. We have Michael Bussewitz-Quarm, an acclaimed choral composer who engages singers and audiences with the leading social and environmental issues of our time. Michael is passionate about affecting change through choral music on topics ranging from the health of the world's coral reefs to the epidemic of gun violence in the United States to the global refugee crisis. Michael's an active advocate for the transgender community. It is her fervent wish to spread knowledge and understanding of the transgender community through guest speaking and simply being present in the lives of the talented musicians and artists surrounding her. A finalist for the 2019 and 20 American Prize, Ms. Bussewitz-Quarm's works are performed by the leading professional educational choral ensembles across North America. Recent collaborations include the West Coast premiere of The Unarmed Child by Eugene Concert Orchestra and Choir, I'll Fly Away at the International Society of Contemporary Music's New Music Days in Vancouver, British Columbia, and Nigra Sum, performed by the Duke University Chorale on their California tour. Michael's works have been rebroadcast on Public Radio East, KMUZ, and WCPE with performances by singers of the New and Ancient Music, Musica Intima, the Greg Smith Singers, the Duke University Chorale, the Esoterics, among other exceptional choral ensembles. Michael's music is published by Peer Music Classical. Welcome, Michael Bussewitz-Quarm.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
It's really a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed getting to know your music, and I've certainly, other composers have been mentioning your music. I finally discovered it, and I'm delighted to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So did you always know you wanted to be an artist?
Yes, absolutely. From a very young age, I started piano when I was 5 years old, and I would sit there at the piano playing. It was my grandmother's piano. It was passed down to my mother, and I would sit at the piano, and I would sit there and play an F and an A. So I found that third, and I just loved the beauty of that third, that major third. I would play it over and over and over and over again. And to me, it was beautiful.
But
Good thing you weren't born in the
imagine
Middle
some people in the
Ages.
house probably got tired of it after a while. But that began my passion and love for non-dissonant music at the time.
So it's a good thing you weren't born in the medieval period. I teach music and civilization. It's kind of a survey course from Western music, and we talk
Yeah.
about how our ears have changed over the centuries, and I just find that fascinating. But
Yeah.
what
yeah.
is it about that third that that kind of fired up your imagination?
Oh, I don't know. I just thought it was just that harmony that that just yeah, I mean, to me at that young age, that was just so beautiful. And I began piano lessons shortly after that. I think that my mom was like, well, they better get a few more notes under their belt there, just to, so then of course John Williams came along with Star Wars, and just blew my mind. And I would rearrange the furniture in the living room, the big sofa and the two chairs, and we had one of those really large tube TVs, and every like different part of the living room would be a different section of the orchestra. And so I put on, have that big gray phonograph that you would, you put on the record and start up the London Symphony, and I conduct, and point to the different chairs and sofas and everything and different cues. And that was just, that was the best thing about Star Wars to me. So, so that was really kind of like when I realized I wanted to make music. I loved it. I grew up with a Methodist church in here on Long Island, that the goal of the choir was to shake the windows, and the organist pulled out all the stops in the final verse and would modulate, half step, and to me that was just so amazing. And that was, there was just so much emotion and power that went into Sunday mornings and joy, and so that was a very big inspiration. And the organist was such a sweet guy, and my family, we had to make ends meet. It was a single parent household. My father was not around, didn't provide, and so my mom worked on Saturdays and brought the whole family down when we were old enough to work and help her clean the church. And the organist, his name is Neil O'Connell, and he would leave the keys for me to, after I did my sweeping, to open up the organ and sit there and play.
What a great story! So you had access to the organ at a young age and to explore. I mean, is there any more exciting instrument than the pipe organ?
There is not. I mean, it's just, especially for a composer, I do some of my best composing while sitting at an organ, to be honest with you. Some of my best choral composing while sitting at an organ.
Something about that instrument and how it supports the singers, whether it's congregational singing or whether it's just a smaller choir. There's so much possibility there, and it's fired us up for the centuries. So,
yeah.
Was your mother a musician?
She was actually. She did take piano lessons when she was growing up. The story is that her piano teacher she was also very much an athlete, was in volleyball and tennis, and at one point her piano teacher said, you either have to stick to sports or stick to piano, you can't do both. And so she chose sports. But, when the piano was brought to her house, she still had, I don't remember the name of it, but da-da-da-da-dum, bum, 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 ba-da-da-da-dum, bum, 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 and she could play that on the piano. And for Elise, and so she'd sit and she'd play, and for me at that age, it was like just so cool that she could do that magic on the piano. So that and she sang in choirs too. She loved, and she still loves singing in choirs. And in fact, in the video that you just shared with everybody, I was so that was the one that started with the song in the song cycle where we find ourselves. It started with "Would You Know Me by My Hair," with the amazing Roosevelt Andre Credit performing the solo, and then I was actually singing with my little virtual choir that I put together over the pandemic. And the woman next to me is my mother. She joined my choir.
No kidding.
Yeah,
That's so special.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, so she's always sung and loved it, and I think that's where Our passion for for music, myself and my sisters, came up, definitely came from her. And she always felt that it was important that we had music in our lives. That would come to really be important to me later on, as I dealt with health issues, but also, it was something that my sisters always had as well, and provided just such beauty in their lives, throughout the years.
So, growing up in a musical household, what was it like? When did you start composing?
Um, I Well, I improvised on the piano, and always kind of just made up my own songs. And then when I was at Ithaca College, I went to Ithaca for my undergraduate. I was in piano performance and mus ed. It was a 4.5 year degree. Um, and um, and sorry, I just need to, yeah, try to mute. I guess I can't mute this. I'm trying to figure out a way to get rid of all the little pings in the background. I'm sorry. Uh,
Welcome to streaming and to
yeah,
Zoom
yeah.
calls.
There we go. Maybe that'll do it. Probably
No
not.
worries.
I hope I have too many windows open.
It's a nice
Um,
soundtrack.
yeah. Um, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. So sorry.
So, your first composition. So, you get to Ithaca
Yeah.
College and you're studying piano performance. And when
Yeah.
does the composition bug strike?
It was fun, actually. You know, speaking of improvisation, I would, my college roommate and my best friend at college, Rick, we would actually sit at the piano and we would just do some really just percussive improvisation, forehand, one piano, four hands, kind of just sit at the piano, just do just this crazy kind of percussive improvisation, and it was really exciting. I did write a little bit while I was in college, but I was more focused on piano performance and the music education. Um, at Ithaca College, it's no joke. It's pretty rigorous, and
Great program over there.
for good reason, of course. So a lot of my time was focused on that. And so I did write a little bit. In fact, when I was in my senior year, I think I had already fulfilled all my performance credits and everything. So I just kind of did my own little recital, and I got to conduct Barbara's Adagio for strings, and then half the concert was also my own works. And there was a local band called Naked Funk that performed one of my pieces, Ballad of Birmingham by the poet Dudley Randall. I think that's the name. I think I have that right. And That was a powerful piece. And then a few other pieces that I had written, and I performed one of my pieces as well. So I did a little bit in college, and then when I started teaching, I composed for my choir as well. But it wasn't really until about 5 years ago that I went full time as a composer.
Really? So that's a relatively recent development. Boy, it's great to have like your own choir that you can use. I've had a few composers. We've had lots of composers on the show, and they talk about like having like quote unquote a lab choir or choir that you're
Yep.
used to that you can try out your ideas on. How important is that? Was that for you?
Um, yeah, that was very important. I think one of the things, at different times, I've had different choirs that I've had the opportunity to share my music with, and when I was teaching, of course, what was wonderful was, I wrote this piece called "The Duel," which is actually a lot of composers have set this to music because it's a lot of fun. "The Gingham Dog and the Calico Cat" by Eugene Field. It's a poem by Eugene Field, my choir performed it, and it was a lot of fun. It's a fun piece. It was my take on it, and that's actually something that's still out there that I've self-published. And then later on, there were some other pieces that I wrote after 9/11. About 6 years after 9/11, I put a piece out, well, a large choral work called Requiem Dies Magna, and um, I realized that the only way for me to really get my career going, because I did really want to have a career as a composer, and this is while I was teaching at first, but what I had to create my own opportunities, and there were a lot of people that had very strong feelings about 9/11 here, being right on Long Island, people knowing people who died in the attack on the Twin Towers, um, and also there's a group called 911 Veterans, which is a group that helps the veterans that are kind of lost in the bureaucracy of, like they need help, but they can't get help yet from whatever government programs are offering that kind of help. And so the 911 Veterans Group would provide a couch for somebody, or a month's rent, just to get them back on their feet and stuff like that. It was an emergency type of thing. They provide turkeys during Thanksgiving for veterans, and so anyway, so there were a lot of people that were very supportive of the group and wanted to help them. So we did a fundraiser in which we prepared over the summer. It was a pickup choir that prepared over the summer Requiem Dies Magna, and all the ticket sales went to, and ad sales went to these went to 911 veterans, yeah, so it
Was that your first major work?
Yes, that
Wow.
was yes. Requiem Dies Magna was my first major work.
How long did it take to write that, and what was from inception until completion?
That is interesting kind of question, because I didn't really have any music. Yeah, obviously it was 9/11 was one of the saddest, most traumatic days in my life and in everybody's life, and there was no music there for a long period. I knew I was going to write about it, but at some point, but there was literally no music for years. There was just this emptiness, this pit, right? And so it took me about 4 years to begin writing. One of the songs that I put in was actually a solo, a tenor solo that had been repurposed from a like a song without words type of situation before 9/11, and it just felt like it really fit for a Kyrie, and so I repurposed that. But everything else came starting about 4 or 5 years after, and then the final movement was revised 3 times over the course of the next 6 years, based on the performances that were given, and how I just couldn't find how I wanted to close this piece, and finally I found it on the 3rd revision. Yeah.
Well, it's such a commitment when you write pieces with such a massive, such a massive responsibility, because yes, like you said, nothing like 9/11, 9/11. I was teaching high school at the time. I just remember, that day is still numb. You feel that moment. We all feel it. Even I had students whose parents died. We all had that kind of experience, and it's even today. I remember exactly where I was, exactly what I was doing. It kind of crystallizes, and to put that into music must be quite a responsibility.
There was a lot of emotion, a lot of feeling that went into it, and then I think that was was it 2010? Was it 2010? That was the first performance. No, maybe it was 2007. I'm forgetting which year was the first performance. The summer choir. The first performance was with organ and cello, and then the second performance was with a all volunteer orchestra, and then the third edition of it, the third time we performed it, was with a orchestra that I had rented out, a local orchestra called Sound Symphony, a fantastic orchestra, I think the one thing that I found between that and then subsequent choral works that we've done over the summer is just the exhaustion from the emotion of it. Because, composing it, you are maybe didn't even realize how much until I actually sat back one day and said, "Oh my God, I'm like not reliving it, but I'm getting in touch with those emotions that, of that particular day. It took me a while to, during that whole entire time period, it took me a while to break away from the updates and the news. And, I just couldn't wrap my head, I guess, around it completely, or I didn't want to like I didn't want to turn away for fear of something else happening, and I mean, it was such a really difficult time. Anyway, so composing about something like that, and I would think most composers would attest to this, is that it is emotionally just, exhausting, and it creeps up on you. At least I think so.
I know I tell my students that it's like that music's like an amber that captures everything that's going around in society, even when it's not such a event driven type of thing, like even an opera. Like if you study Mozart, it's really important to know what was going on in his life, and it captures everything kind of going on in that time period. But when you do a piece like this, which is so linked to chronology and to that exact moment, it must be very powerful.
Yes.
Now, a lot of your works have a social connotation. Did that kind of spur you to continue that vein and that kind of exploring social issues in music?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the powerful things to me about choral music in particular is the social aspect to it. For me, that's very powerful for a number of reasons. I am disabled. I've had a chronic illness since I was quite young, actually. There have been periods of time where I have been removed from society in order to survive, having, a very compromised immune system when I was young, kept me out of school for a number of years. Going back to school, I was different. I couldn't socialize in the same ways. I think that all leads to just a great deal of power for me in terms of the like saying, hey, there is something that's inside me that other people find powerful also. And it's this connection that, that I have through music, where I can connect to people and and share emotions, and I felt that, I found that, when something happened inside me that was really either distressing or really powerful in a positive way, there were often other people that were feeling the same way, and so, so to actually be able to capture, the field of this, the abstract. I'm not describing it the right way, but there's music that's around us all the time, right? It's just everywhere. It's flowing around us, and we kind of just, pull it out of the air and make sense of it. And if it makes sense to me, and in the same way that it makes sense to, about 10, 30, 50 other people at the same time, where we can harmonize and just make beautiful music out of it. It's just such a powerful experience.
I love that, the powerful metaphor. It's so it is such it's one of the only, like, music is one of the only ways that we can, there's so much in society that divides us, right? The news can divide people. Everything seems divisive these days. But in some ways, music's one of those things that break down those boundaries. And I just love the fact that you're actively doing that, and how important that is.
Thank you. It is true that we are really focused on our divisions right now, and have a lot of powerful voices that are amplifying our divisions, and music does have the power to bring us together. And it could be, hopefully it's used for good and for good reasons.
With composers like yourself out there putting out good messages and great music, it's we keep on believing, because that's all we can believe, is that music has that power to change lives, and that we keep on our communities together and whole, and things like your virtual choir that we showed on the video. I mean, things like they're so important, because so many people who couldn't sing together live got inspiration from either watching or be participating in the virtual experience. I mean, there's so many ways to be creative as a musician.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. When the pandemic hit, I just never imagined that any kind of global event would ever, affect the choral world. I mean, it just seems like, how, what in this world could keep, concerts from going on and for music from being performed, and here we are, and it was, heart heartbreaking for the entire, industry, community, and I think that there was a real concern about, at least from what I heard in the outset of um, of virtual choirs, and rightfully so. There's so many things that you can't do with a virtual choir that we do in regular performance. And there was a mourning period, right? But what I found out, is that there was so much that virtual choirs did end up offering singers, that needed that connection, that contact, the music making, in a different way, albeit, but still the music making, but also just the interpersonal connections. I'm part of a panel in the ACDA Eastern Conference this upcoming February in Boston, and I'm really grateful to have been invited. And part of the reason I was invited, was to speak about the trans experience in the choral community, in the choral world. And but another part that I feel really strongly about is the disabled experience. Those that have deal with physical disabilities, and the experience in the choral community. And I think that I encourage that discussion to happen more and more. There are a number of people who have had to leave the choral community because they physically can't participate, in choral rehearsals. And one thing I think that really was kind of cool about, the virtual choir setting, even though we were forced to do it, but I'm hoping it does continue, because there are people that came back to the choral community because the choral community came to them finally.
Come into their
And
living rooms and they can sing whatever. There's no risk of transmitting aerosolized particles. I found that
yeah,
too. I mean, one of my
yeah,
choral societies still we actually we Zoom rehearsal and we put out the live stream. People who live in what do you have, one Colorado person, one Florida person, they still continue to be a part of the choral society's experience. I think it's really special.
that is really special. And there's so many different reasons why people cannot physically be present, whether it's dealing with a disability, or whether it's, a single parent, whether it's somebody who's, working two jobs, and just doesn't have that time. There's multiple reasons, and the virtual choir experience does provide for those people. In fact, there was one really interesting. I've been asking people for their, for their own feedback, their own experiences with virtual choirs, and one woman, I didn't get permission to say her name, so I'll just say that it was
We'll call her Ellis.
Alice. Yes. And she said that, how cool is it that she got to do these rehearsals with her children watching her sing and
That's
participate.
cool.
It's like, that's great, because it's intergenerational, because they get to experience, their kids get to experience hearing them sing, where they would be in bed, at that point by rehearsal time, or, just not be with them. How many choirs does it bring your kids to choir rehearsal? It doesn't happen very often. So there's just so many real benefits that I think that we're just discovering now, that are really quite awesome.
The whole community part of singing is so important. I mean, without that, that was the one thing, that's one of the, so we would always I did two choral societies during COVID, plus my university, plus my summer job at Ocean Grove, and all of them were different communities of choral singers. And
Yeah.
I think I did about 100, my son and I did about 100 virtual choir projects. And man,
That's
it's a totally different world from like live performance, but you know what? It kept communities whole, and I found that
Yeah.
people were sending in videos from India and one from Australia. It was just like such an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. It really did save us. And I think it is expanding us now. There's this whole entire conversation between participatory and performance based, and we are very much performance based, I think, as a whole, as as a collective. But the participatory, the virtual choir does lead interesting, ways in which it can be, there are participatory opportunities, you know for virtual, in a virtual choir setting, that maybe we just wouldn't have thought about before. you know
Did you write specific pieces for virtual choir performances?
well, I it's interesting because the where we find ourselves performance, which is what you were playing for your audience before we began. Um, the project was actually like the idea popped into my mind about a year before the pandemic hit, just based on some photographs that I saw down at a museum when I was part of a workshop for another commission. I was down in Raleigh, North Carolina, and the woman who was hosting me brought me to the National Museum at Duke University, and I got to see the photo. I got to see this exhibit on these photographs from 100 years ago, local to the Durham area, and rediscovered after a long night of disregard, and so that's where the project came, like it started. The idea started, and I started promoting it at the ACDA conference in Rochester in March of 2020, a week before the world shut down. And that's when I started promoting it. I already like discounted it, knowing that every single choir was going to take a hit and lose concerts and stuff like that. So I was like, you know what? I'd rather get some choirs than no choirs. And I ended up getting 30 choirs. It was a wonderfully successful, consortium, probably my most successful in terms of the numbers. But what was really cool about it, and the reason I bring that up is because obviously I converted everything to like, the virtual accompaniments and whatnot. But it was based on photographs. And the first part, like when I did my own virtual choir and what a lot of the choirs did that were participating, in this consortium, I don't know if I explained this, but it was a consortium of choirs that commissioned me. They pulled their resources. And so all 30 choirs would get access to the photographs. It was Alex Harris and Margaret Sartor, were kind enough to not only give us the access to the photographs to look and discuss, but they participated in these panel discussions that I put together with Dr. Sherry Boyd and Chantel Sellers, my lyricist, and Tina Sayers, who was writing the co-curriculum to go with this project for those that are, part of schools. And, so they could work with other subjects at the same time, and so we had these conversations, and I over Zoom. So I recorded them and then edited them down. And so they were fascinating conversations. And during the editing process, I would, if Margaret or Alex were talking about a particular photograph, I would, show that. And so during the first half of this project, we basically would watch a video. It's like half an hour or so, and then we would talk about it, and we'd have these amazing conversations about, and it really became very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very timely, because, there was the murder of George Floyd occurred. I'm forgetting dates right now. I'm drawing blanks as to the actual dates, but
sure, we all remember that was a powder keg that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was May, if I'm not mistaken, of 2020. It could have been June. I don't remember exactly when it was, but that happened after the project, was promoted and everything, and yet the panel conversations, we're dealing with the Jim Crow era, because this is where the photographs came from. And so, what was really interesting, what Dr. Boyd offered and what Alex and Margaret offered, were all very conversations that helped people to be able to talk about what was going on in the world, and what was really cool about these conversations also was that everybody could kind of, whatever ensemble it was, could approach it at their own level, and some were ready to dig in deeper than other groups, and there were different age levels. So so they approached it, at where they found themselves, and so there was all this interaction and all this participation by everybody involved, and it turned out to be a really beautiful project for a time when people really needed, we were all shut in and we needed to express, some really serious, deep emotions that we had about what was going on, whether it was the pandemic, whether it was, the the, the murder of George Floyd, or the depression going with, being shut in, and I mean, there's just so many things. So it really did. I think, turn out to be something that worked very well for, for the virtual choir setting. Yeah.
It's great that you can find a way to serve people and to bring them some healing, because it was such a difficult time for all of us to just kind of process that. And that outlet, that artistic outlet was, what was some of the reception you had from the singers?
Well, I like, for example, my choir, which was a smaller choir. I was so busy recruiting choirs for the, to commission the piece, and then by the time I put it together, my own little virtual choir, we got a small but mighty choir. It was really nice. It was some really great singers, and what was really cool is, some of the singers recruited their friends, and so it was kind of nice. But I was told that, like, they really looked forward to that particular day of the week, that particular time. So there was that connection that was really valuable to, just to sit and talk. It wasn't just rehearsing, it was sitting and talking. We would open up each, because, the project was called Where We Find Ourselves, and we'd open up each rehearsal with going around the room, the quote unquote room, saying, where do you find yourself to this, today? And so people would share, and there were some things that people really needed to
Definitely.
get off the chest, that they didn't have anybody to talk to. Some were living alone, and still working through this, dealing with very extenuating circumstances. And so that was positive. And then the other thing that was just really, really wonderful, and again, I'm so grateful to Margaret and Alex. By the way, I didn't mention that they were photography professors at Duke University.
Oh, that makes sense. I saw the pic. The imagery was gorgeous, and the compilation of those images.
Yeah, and in fact, some of the photos were shared in the video that you shared right before before we started talking. But so they actually met with each choir, for a conversation, and so that was just really cool. And then I met with each choir, along with Chantel, my lyricist, on a separate time as well. So each choir got to have the conversation with the composer and the lyricist, and then a separate conversation with the artist that curated the exhibit and wrote the companion book to the exhibit. So there was really wonderful questions, wonderful conversations going on at all different levels, whether it was middle school kids, whether it was high school, or whether it was community choirs. They all had really important things to say about how they saw the photographs, how they heard the music. It was wonderful for me to be able to hear, some students say, I'm transgender also, or hear from a choir director beforehand, I do have some trans students, and they might not say anything because they're shy, but, I'm just really glad that they get to meet you, that kind of thing. So it was really positive overall. I'll never forget that.
That's incredible. I just put a link to Where We Find Ourselves, the entire video. You can check that out on, I think, Michael's YouTube channel. It's up there, I believe.
Thank you. Yeah. I have multiple performances of it. The concert singers of Carrie did a wonderful job, especially not only with their singing, but also with how they positioned the photographs and placed them in the performance.
Wow.
So that's a wonderful performance when it comes to the actual photographs and how they were placed. And Margaret and Alex really were very thrilled after that performance to see how they did that. So I encourage them to check that out too.
Are there plans to perform where we find ourselves live?
Yes, there is.
Excellent.
Actually, it's very exciting. So my Carnegie Hall debut happens to be the premiere of the Carnegie premiere of Where We Find Ourselves.
When is that going to be so people can look up their schedule? And
Yeah. So that's going to be June 6th. So this is going to be under the direction of Dr. Rodney Weinkoop, who is the director of choirs, the choral director of the Duke University Chorale and Durham Choral Society. So he has done a lot of these things. I don't know if he's worked with DCINY before. That's the company that is bringing Where We Find Ourselves to Carnegie. But anyway, it's June 4th through 6th, with rehearsals on the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and then the concert on the 6th that evening, followed by a dinner for all the participants. So.
how exciting!
It's
Congratulations! That's going to be
very
such a
exciting.
magnificent celebration, and I'm sure it'll be a
It really
completely
is.
different experience live.
Oh, I can't imagine. I'm really, really. I mean, this is what I dreamed about. When I went full time as a composer in my mid 40s. It's just like this was like something that's like maybe someday. I'll be at Carnegie. One of my pieces will be formed somewhere, and now it's being featured. With one of those choral festivals.
So exciting!
Yeah,
Congratulations! After all
Thank
that
you.
hard work, what advice do you have for young composers who are maybe in the same place, thinking about making a transition and that crazy leap? I know I did something like that. I was a public school teacher, and when I started my doctorate, I had 3 kids and a 4th on the way while I was doing my doctorate. How it was kind of crazy to make that leap to become a conductor or to go a different direction. What advice do you have for people who might be thinking about that?
Well, I really do feel that you have to love what you do. And of course, not everybody has that opportunity all the time. That's the reality of the world. And there are a lot of realities that, take place. We are a country that does not believe that everybody should have health care. you know, and or that might not be the right way to word it. I apologize about that, but the fact is that people need to, find certain jobs and stuff like that for those particular reasons, or, anyway, I had a lot of roadblocks that came my way, and then I didn't. And as I was dealing with those roadblocks, I was always writing and composing. I was always, keeping that dream alive. And sometimes it was very much the fourth or fifth thing on the most important things to do list. After my jobs, which people depended upon me for, how could I be writing music now when I should be, planning lessons, or or preparing for my church, my church choir, or what have you, because people are depending upon those. And composing is just it's so much joy, it's so much fun. It must be too selfish, but then it's like a certain point where, like, I got to sit down with my wife and say, I know we're going to take a hit on this, but if I know we're going to take a hit financially on this, but if I don't, I can't be a composer part-time. It's just not working. I just can't, I can't build, a self-publishing business, and so, she said, you're right. So we took a hit, and, I moved over to composing, and, it took a while. And there were many times I was like, I just, this is too much. This is too overwhelming. I am not going to get where I want to get. And I just kept plugging away. And I think the biggest advice I have is that if you keep doing it, if you love it, right? So keep doing it. Over time, the organic experience of being around people and being in the community will start paying dividends. So, in other words, I mean, yes, you can kind of force it. And I have to say, I admit that I did I did feel that mid 40s, I gotta put out twice the amount of music quality, but still, I have to like work, 10 hours a day and whatever, just to try to get somewhere. I have to create my own opportunities. And I still believe that you do have to create your own opportunities in this world. Um, but at the same time, what I'm finding now is that there is an organic kind of like, oh, I met you at a conference, so I like your music, or I heard your piece at this other at this other concert. And then what's really interesting and I think is really powerful is when somebody chooses your piece to be sung in a what do you call it, at a workshop, at a repertoire reading
A choral
session.
read, sure, those are great sessions.
Yeah. And so you have 100, like when it happened at Kansas City at the national conference, there were 100 choir directors that were sitting in the room singing the Silver Swan. And it was like, this is great. That's one of the pieces that is now published by Pure Music. But, of course, this all happened, 2 years before the pandemic, which that's the other thing too. When you hand out music at a conference, if you hand out like, what is it called? Like sample sheet music and stuff like that. Um, you know, don't expect sales the next day, right? I mean, because people have to fit these into programs of ideas that they have
It
that would
takes
that
the
work with your
pipeline
piece.
takes time, right? It takes
Takes a
time for
few
the
years
pipeline to work.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So it's all
Not
about just
instantaneous.
letting yourself grow organically, trusting that if you feel like you have good quality music, if you really love what you write and people are connecting with it, give it time. It takes time. It really takes a lot of time.
That's a lot of wisdom in those statements. Thank you so much, Michael, for sharing that.
Yeah.
We have a lot of younger people listening to the show, and I think it's a great inspiration to hear people's. Everyone's got such a unique artistic journey, and yours is completely unique. And I think there's so much validity in the fact that you stick with it, you change, you believe in what you're doing, and you put in the work and the time, and it will pay off.
Thanks. It's been quite a ride. It really has. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. The ups, the downs, and everything in between. I'm very grateful and very lucky for where I've come from and where I am now.
It's a great blessing to get to do what you love and to find a way to support that and continued success. What was it like when you got published for the first time? I know you self-published. Do you when you first got your pieces published, what did that feel like?
Well, that was, yeah. So, I mean, when you're self-publishing, of course, I'm very much a firm believer in self-publishing, and that's why most of my music is self-published. But, as a self-publisher, you don't have the arm, the reach, or anything like that. When in terms of publicity, in terms of, marketing and whatnot. So, for me, it served two purposes. One, I knew that I wasn't going to have to do any marketing, although I still, do like to market those pieces. I'm proud of them. I want to see them, get performances and whatever. But for me, as as a 45-year-old who had been out of teaching for 10 years at this point, and you know, identify as trans, and I'm and also disabled, and trying to get back into the field after being away from it for so long. Publishing for me was resume building. I don't have a degree in composition. I have a degree in music education, which was extremely important and valuable in terms of as a composer, because I got to be in front of students at different levels, and experience what it's like for a teacher to to be a conductor at the same time, and also to put together plans around a choral program, and so it was incredibly valuable. And then I got to sing in different choirs, and local university, and community choirs, and that's how I really kind of developed my voice as a composer, I believe. But to get published by an international publisher like Pure Music was very validating for me. It was very validating. It did two things. It made me feel like I not only feel I can do this, but somebody else is willing to put their name on my music and market my music as well. And so I did it. And so there was that feeling of like, validation, but also, for me, that went on my resume as well. You know,
That's
um,
fantastic. And
I like people to like my music for the purposes of liking my music, but I also feel that, having that, really did help.
absolutely. We're on Music Matters with Michael Bussewitz-Quarm, and we're talking about his music. Where can you go to find your more information about your music and about you?
Right now, my website is mbqstudio.com, and I'm actually working on a new website, but that website name will be with me for a good long time because it's on all
Perfect.
my cards for the last 5 years and all my music for the last 5 years and whatnot. So, but yeah, that's where you can find me. I'm on Facebook and you know, mostly Facebook. Some Instagram. My daughter kind of helps me run my Instagram when I give her information to update it on.
It helps to have a whole team. I know my son works with me here, and
Yeah,
I have 4 children. They all kind of work with me in different ways, and it's just
that's
such a
great.
blessing to be around your kids and to
Yeah,
participate that way.
absolutely, absolutely.
Do you regularly interact with people who are inspired by your music? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely do. Through Facebook, through I have an email, listenafresh@gmail.com is the one that I get most of my correspondence from. I do take a few days to respond. So if somebody does reach out to me, please be patient. It seems, especially this past season, it seems to be that there's a bit of a delay in terms of the response. I'm trying to turn off all social media when I'm composing and trying to really get, some deep work in. But at the same time, I do love and I'm happy to talk with anybody that's interested in chatting about an upcoming project or one of my pieces, or if there's somebody in the field that is, a young composer, or is a trans singer, or and just wants to make a connection. We don't even have to talk about anything in particular. Just to have that connection sometimes is nice.
Mentors are so important for people on the rise and people who are developing as composers or musicians of any sort, and to have people
Yeah.
to look up to is so important. Role models.
Yeah, it really is. Representation is more and more important as I get older and I realize how important it is. As we have people, like, for example, I was part of a. I'll just share this really quickly. So my book just arrived. So Matthew Garrett and Josh Palkey. I don't know if you know the name Josh Palkey, but they
I
wrote a
don't.
book called Honoring Trans and Gender Expansive Students in Music Education. And they actually did interview myself and a number of other trans musicians for this book. And so there's some quotes in here, which I'm proud of to be part of. But I'm also learning a ton, and representation is so important because there is a lot of feeling safe in spaces where you feel that you are included and where you feel that you are represented. And so I encourage all, choir directors, musicians of any sort to, if they can, to invest in this. It's in paperback now.
So important.
And it really is important. I'm learning a lot, and I think everybody will. It's a very well written book.
If people don't feel safe, how can you give your heart out to a performance if you don't feel like you're part of something special? I think that's such an important topic for today, and I can't wait to get that book.
Yeah, absolutely. You said that so well. I mean, that's just so we teach. I just have to. There's one sentence in here.
Please
So
do. I love it.
we it's who wrote this quote? It says we don't teach music, we teach people through music, right? And so I don't have. I see that's in a quote, but let me just see. I don't know if that was directly quoted to anybody, but that it's just emphasized, and it's just so important that everybody should feel the sense of you know a part of it and belonging. And there's this term called cultural responsive pedagogy, and it's about considering backgrounds to when teaching, students' backgrounds or singers' backgrounds when teaching. And I think that is just so important also, as to where each student finds themselves or where each singer finds themselves, when it comes to our choirs and stuff. So it's really, I'm looking forward to digging deeper into the book. I'm just beginning to read it. It just came in the mail.
That's going to be my winter break. I just finished all my university. I've got one more university con. We have our lessons in carols this Friday, but I just finished like 8 concerts in a row, and I'm looking forward to doing some reading.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Nice, relaxing. Put your feet up, kind of taking a break, right?
Well, I'm doing Rigoletto in there too, but snuck that in there.
Oh, okay.
But there's a lot of travel time, so you're always on the plane. It's always good to be reading when you have that downtime. And I love to read.
Right.
That sounds like a great book, and really, it's so important because our students come from us from every, so many different places, emotionally and mentally, and from different cultures. And I just find it just helps to, find to meet them where they are.
Meet them where they are, and and sometimes transitions in life. I mean, obviously, a gender transition is something that's very physically obvious, but not every trans person is out. So sometimes it's invisible. Sometimes it's something that they have to keep hidden for whatever reason. But every person is going through a transition of some sort, and a lot of there are people that are going through transitions that are, in their own lives, so that they might have an illness at home, which like a parent that has an illness, or they might be dealing in an abusive situation, so I just feel like that's something that's really important, that even though there are special needs and of course representation is important for trans students, they are also just like there's so much in common with them and the students around them in terms of their joys, their sadnesses, and what they have gone through or what they're going through. Hopefully, if a teacher or a director encounters a trans singer, hopefully they have the support at home. That obviously is not always the case, but hopefully it's a supportive atmosphere in their homes.
Well, thank you for giving us some words for wisdom, and hopefully we can all find ways to make our classrooms and our choirs and our rehearsals and our music as inclusive as so everyone can be a part of that, because we have to break down those boundaries that are so prevalent in our society. I think it's so important. That's something that we can do as musicians that others can't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any
Definitely.
commissions you want to you're probably busy on very many commissions, but anything you want to announce coming up? Anything you want to share with us?
I do have a consortium. I'm not sure when this is going out, so it might be closed by the time this goes out. But although I know some people are listening now, so I'll just mention it. There's this commission that I'm doing right now, which is rather light, joyful, hopeful, uplifting type of song called "I Am a Voice That Sings," and it's being written for every single arrangement. So I'm starting out with SATB, but I also have the unison written already, and it's going to have SSA. It's going to have ATB, which is alto, tenor, bass, right? It's going to have TTB. It's going to have 2-part. So I'll have all these different arrangements of this, and so any choir that's interested in being part of the I Am a Voice That Sings commissioning consortium can check it out now. You can find it through my website. And we're still looking for choirs. It's open through January 5th. I'm hoping to build up our ranks a little bit more.
Exciting. Where can people go to find that? On your website?
On my website, so mbqstudio.com. Yep. They just go there, and then they go to projects, I believe it is, maybe at the top of the page. I'm not sure. And then they just click on that, and it'll give, so it's 21/22 consortiums and projects, and it's the very first subcategory. I'm a Voice That Sings, and it pulls up the project and all the information and the link to join, and a sample recording done by a singer of a friend of mine made the recording of the solo version of it. So. Yeah.
Well, such great music being written, and find ways to engage with composers like yourself. I hope choirs take full advantage of that, and that you are as busy as possible. I know that life came storming back for most musicians. It's kind of been like like an avalanche. Like, I used to be really busy before COVID.
Yeah.
But it's exciting to get back to live music making, and but with new wisdom and new tools at our disposal.
Yes, absolutely.
Michael, thank you so much for sharing time with us today, and I wish you continued success, especially with your Carnegie Hall debut. How exciting.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate it.
Continued. Well, I look forward to meeting you in the future.
Yes, same here.
Thank you for joining us on Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Please remember to subscribe on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on our upcoming guests and topics. Be sure to check us out on our website to see our over 230 past episodes at www.jasontram.net. Remember, keep music alive.